I found the photo on a Tuesday. Not because I was looking for it, because my laptop froze during a client presentation and I had to force restart it. And when it came back up, every folder I'd had open was still there on my screen, including one I didn't remember opening, including one that had her name on it. Sarah_birthday_surprise. The file name alone made my stomach drop. My girlfriend's name, on my best friend's computer, the computer I'd borrowed because mine was in the shop. The computer Ethan had handed me that morning with a casual, "Yeah, man, use it as long as you need." I should have closed it. I should have shut the whole thing down, finished my presentation, and pretended I'd never seen it. But my hand was already on the mouse and the folder was already opening, and then I was staring at 243 photos that made my entire world collapse into a single moment of absolute clarity. They were dated, organized by month. The earliest one was from 9 months. I'll go. The most recent was from last week, the night she told me she was having dinner with her sister. In every single photo, my best friend of 15 years was inside my girlfriend of 3 years. And they were both smiling like they'd won something. My name is Andrew Foster, and before that Tuesday I thought I knew what pain felt like. I'd broken bones. I'd lost my father to cancer when I was 19. I'd failed my first startup and watched 2 years of work dissolve into nothing. But none of that, absolutely none of it, prepared me for the feeling of seeing the two people you trust most in the world wrapped around each other in positions that kept replaying in my head no matter how hard I tried to stop them. The presentation, I had to finish the presentation. I don't know how I did it. I closed the folder. I opened my client deck. I talked about data, architecture, and cloud migration strategies like I wasn't dying inside. The clients nodded and asked questions and I answered them. And when it was over, they shook my hand and said they were impressed and they'd be in touch about moving forward. I walked out of that conference room, got in my car, and sat in the parking garage for 45 minutes, trying to remember how to breathe. The logical part of my brain, the part that had built a successful career as a solutions architect, was already working through the timeline. 9 months. Sarah and I had been together 3 years, living together for 2. 9 months ago was June. June was when Ethan had broken up with his girlfriend Claire. June was when he'd stayed at our apartment for 2 weeks because he said he needed space to think. June was when Sarah had started going to the gym more often. June was when everything had started. And I'd helped him. I'd told Sarah to be patient with him, to give him space, to understand he was going through something. I'd covered for him when he flaked on plans. I'd listened to him talk about how lost he felt, how he didn't know who he was anymore, how he needed to figure out his life. The whole time, he was figuring it out with my girlfriend. My phone buzzed. Sarah. "Hey babe, running late at work, but I'll be home by 8. Want me to pick up Ty?" I stared at the message for a full minute before I could make my fingers type a response. "Sure. Sounds good." 3 little words. They felt like swallowing glass. I didn't go home at 8. I didn't go home at 9. I drove instead, nowhere in particular, just driving through Seattle streets I'd known my whole life that suddenly felt completely foreign. Every memory was contaminated now. Every moment I'd shared with either of them was suspect. Ethan had been my best friend since we were 12 years old, middle school. We'd bonded over being the weird kids, him with his obsession with comic books and science fiction, me with my fixation on taking apart electronics to see how they worked. We'd survived high school together, gone to the same college, University of Washington computer science program, been roommates for 4 years. He was the best man at my brother's wedding. I was supposed to be the best man at his whenever he figured his life out enough to get married. We'd talked about it, half joking but half serious, about how we'd end up living near each other Our kids growing up together, growing old as those friends who'd known each other forever. 15 years of friendship, 15 years of trust, 15 years of assuming we were brothers in everything but blood. And Sarah. God, Sarah. I'd met her at a tech networking event 3 years ago. She was in marketing for a cloud services company, brilliant and funny and so goddamn beautiful I'd stumbled over my introduction. Our first date had lasted 7 hours, dinner that turned into drinks that turned into walking around downtown until midnight, talking about everything and nothing. She got me. She understood the pressure of working in tech, the constant imposter syndrome, the way you could lose yourself in code and forget the outside world existed. She'd pulled me out of my shell, made me more social, introduced me to new experiences. She'd made me better, or at least I thought she had. I ended up at Discovery Park, sitting on a bench overlooking Puget Sound in the dark, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. 243 photos. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a drunken slip-up. That was systematic. That was intentional. That was a relationship. My phone kept buzzing, Sarah calling now, then texting. Where are you? Are you okay? You're scaring me. Ethan, too. Hey, man, Sarah said you're not home. Everything cool? The audacity of that message. The absolute fucking audacity. I turned my phone off. I didn't sleep that night. I drove until 3 in the morning, then sat in an all-night diner in Ballard, drinking coffee and trying to figure out what to do. The logical options were simple. Confront them. End it. Move on, but something in me resisted the simplicity of that. Something darker, something I hadn't known existed in me until I'd seen those photos, wanted more than just a confrontation, wanted more than just walking away. They'd been doing this for 9 months. 9 months of lying to my face, 9 months of secret smiles and hidden texts and stolen moments while I worked late or traveled for clients. 9 months of making me feel crazy for the little things I'd noticed. Sarah being distant, Ethan being too helpful, the way they sometimes exchanged glances I couldn't quite read. I'd asked Sarah if everything was okay. Multiple times. She'd told me I was being paranoid. She'd told me work was stressful. She'd told me I was projecting my own stress onto her. I'd asked Ethan if he thought things were weird with Sarah. He'd told me relationships go through phases. He'd told me I was lucky to have her. He'd told me to appreciate what I had. 9 months of gaslighting. 9 months of making me doubt my own perceptions. 9 months of turning my concern into a character flaw. That's what made it unforgivable. Not just the betrayal itself, but the systematic way they'd made me feel like I was the problem for noticing. The sun was coming up when I finally turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls, 23 texts, 1 voicemail from Sarah, crying about how worried she was, begging me to just let her know I was alive. I called her at 6 a.m. "Oh my God, Andrew, where have you been? I'm fine." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, empty. "Sorry, work emergency. Client system went down. I had to drive to their office in Tacoma. Phone died." "You scared the shit out of me." "I know, I'm sorry. I'll be home in an hour." "Do you want me to make breakfast?" "Yeah, that would be nice." I hung up before she could hear something in my voice that would give me away. When I walked into our apartment at 7:30 that morning, Sarah ran to me and wrapped her arms around me like I'd been gone for weeks instead of hours. She smelled like her coconut shampoo and the coffee she'd just made. She felt exactly like she always felt, warm and familiar and safe. And all I could think about was Ethan's hands on her body in those photos. "You're shaking," she said, pulling back to look at me. "Are you okay?" "Just exhausted. It was a rough night." "Come on, I made eggs. You need to eat." We sat at the kitchen table, the table we'd picked out together at IKEA, The table we'd argued about because she wanted white and I wanted wood, and we'd compromised on grey and ate breakfast like nothing was wrong. She talked about her day ahead, a big presentation for a potential client. I listened and nodded and asked the right questions. Inside, I was running calculations, probabilities, risk assessments, the same analytical framework I used for system architecture, now applied to my own life. If I confronted them now, it would be explosive but brief. Anger, denial, maybe some tears. They'd apologize or they wouldn't. Either way, it would end with me alone, them together or separate, and all of us moving on eventually. That was the standard outcome, the expected result. But I didn't want the standard outcome. I wanted them to feel what I felt. Not just for a day or a week, but fundamentally, permanently. I wanted them to understand what they'd destroyed, and I wanted them to destroy each other in the process. That required something different. That required patience. That required still having Ethan's laptop, which I did, sitting in my car with an entire archive of evidence neither of them knew I'd seen. "You're being quiet," Sarah said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 3 years I couldn't find anything real behind her eyes. Just performance, just a character she was playing, just thinking about work. I said, "Big week ahead." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "You'll crush it. You always do." The next 3 days were the hardest of my life, not because of the pain. The pain was constant now, a background radiation I was learning to function through, but because of the acting. Every moment required a conscious decision to play the role of Andrew Foster, loving boyfriend, loyal best friend, normal person. I went to work, I wrote code, I had meetings, I responded to Slack messages and emails like I wasn't hollowed out inside. I came home to Sarah, I kissed her hello, I asked about her day, I made dinner with her, watched TV with her, went to bed with her. When she initiated sex, I managed to perform, and I hated myself for it, and I hated her more for not seeing anything wrong. How could she not see? How could she touch me and not feel the difference? But she didn't. Neither of them did. Ethan texted me Thursday. "Beer tomorrow night? Been too long, man." I wrote back. "Can't work thing. Next week? For sure. Miss you, dude. Miss me." While he was fucking my girlfriend, while they were probably laughing about how clueless I was, while they were building their own private world and using me as the foundation. I spent my evenings after Sarah fell asleep doing research. Not on them. I already knew everything I needed to know about them, on revenge itself, on the psychology of it, on case studies of systematic destruction. The internet is full of revenge stories. Most of them are either fake or stupid or both. Public call-outs that backfire, property destruction that leads to arrests, violence that destroys the avenger more than the target. But buried in the noise were patterns that worked, patterns based on leverage, on information asymmetry, on letting people destroy themselves while you just remove the safety rails. I realized something important during those late-night research sessions. The actual betrayal wasn't the worst thing they'd done to me. The worst thing was the infrastructure of lies they'd built to support it. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the way they'd made me doubt reality. That's what I needed to return to them. Not just pain, confusion, the experience of not being able to trust their own perceptions, the feeling of their entire world being built on foundations that were quietly crumbling. The first step was information. I had the photos from Ethan's laptop, but I needed context. I needed to understand the full scope of their relationship, their communication patterns, their plans. Friday night, Sarah went out with her book club. Something I now understood was code for meeting Ethan. I told her I was working late, left the office at my normal time, and went home to our empty apartment. Sarah wasn't particularly sophisticated about digital security. She used the same password for everything, a variant of her birthday and the name of her childhood dog. Her laptop was in the bedroom, asleep but not locked. Her phone was fingerprint protected, but I'd watched her enter her passcode hundreds of times. I'm not proud of what I did next, except I am a little, because what I found confirmed everything I'd suspected and worse. Their messages went back exactly 9 months. The first few were innocuous, Ethan asking about her book recommendations, Sarah sending him articles about startups. Then they got flirtier, then they got explicit, then they got logistical. They'd had sex in our apartment multiple times, in our bed, on the couch where I watched TV, in the shower I used every morning. They talked about me, about how to handle me. Ethan called me naive. Sarah called me oblivious. They joked about how easy it was to lie to me because I always believed the best in people. There was a thread where they discussed whether to tell me. Ethan said yes, ripped the Band-Aid off, I'd eventually forgive him, maybe we could even stay friends. Sarah said no, I'd never forgive her, I'd make it difficult, better, to just let it run its course until they figured out what they wanted. What they wanted. Like I was a variable in their equation. Like my entire life was just something they were workshopping. The most recent messages were from that night, while Sarah was supposedly out with her book club. Sarah: he's working late again, I could come over. Ethan: place is a mess. Tomorrow? Sarah: can't tomorrow, he wants to do something for my birthday. Ethan: the big 3-0, you feeling old yet? Sarah: feeling like I want to spend it with you instead. Ethan: soon, I promise. Her birthday was in 2 weeks. I'd already made reservations at her favourite restaurant, already ordered the bracelet she'd been hinting about for months, already arranged to take Monday off so we could have a long weekend. I sat there on our bedroom floor, her laptop open in front of me, and I felt something crystallize inside me. Not just anger anymore, purpose. I copied everything, their messages, her photos, her emails. I copied them to an encrypted cloud drive, to 2 different USB sticks, to a hidden folder on my own laptop. I screenshotted the most damaging conversations. I documented dates and times. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, and went to work on Phase 2. Phase 2 was establishing new patterns, not of my behavior, changing that would make them suspicious, but of their expectations of my behavior. The following week I started working late more often. I told Sarah I was up for a promotion, needed to show leadership I could handle bigger projects. She was supportive, encouraging, told me she was proud of me. What I was actually doing was going to a coffee shop with my laptop, building a complete profile of both their lives, Sarah's work situation, Ethan's freelance consulting business, their families, their friends, their social networks, their vulnerabilities. Ethan had always been ambitious but undisciplined. He was brilliant, genuinely brilliant, not just tech bro bullshit, but he'd never been able to see projects through. He'd start companies and abandon them, take freelance contracts and deliver late. He was currently working on some blockchain consulting thing that he swore was going to make him rich, but I knew him well enough to know it was probably another dead end. Sarah was the opposite. Hyper-organized, focused, driven. She'd climbed from junior marketing coordinator to senior marketing manager in 4 years. She had a 5-year plan. She tracked everything in spreadsheets. She was meticulous about her professional reputation, different weaknesses, different attack vectors. I started having lunch with Ethan again, just casual stuff every week or 2, enough to maintain the friendship while I gathered intelligence. He was going through a rough patch, he told me. The blockchain thing wasn't panning out. He was burning through savings. He might need to get a real job again. You should talk to Sarah, I said. Her company's always hiring consultants. She could probably get you in. His face did something complicated when I said that. Guilt, maybe? Or excitement about the possibility of working near her. Yeah, maybe, he said. That's a good idea. I planted that seed and watched it grow. Over the next few days, Sarah mentioned that Ethan had reached out about opportunities at her company. Mentioned it casually, like it was nothing. Like it was just a friend helping a friend. You should help him, I said. He needs it right now. Are you sure? I know you two are close. I don't want to make things weird. The irony of that statement almost made me laugh. It's fine, I said. You'd be helping him out. That's what friends do. Sarah's birthday came. I took her to Canlis, one of the nicest restaurants in Seattle. I gave her the bracelet. I told her I loved her, and I watched her eyes fill with tears, and I couldn't tell if they were real or not anymore. You're too good to me, she said. You deserve it, I said. We had sex that night. She fell asleep after, curled against me, her breathing slow and steady. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ethan's messages, about how she'd wanted to spend her birthday with him instead. The old Andrew would have broken down, would have confronted her right then, unable to hold it in anymore. The new Andrew, the one who'd been born the moment I opened that folder, just filed the information away and waited. 3 weeks after I'd found the photos, Sarah came home excited about something. You'll never guess what happened, she said. What? I got Ethan an interview at my company. They're looking for a blockchain consultant, exactly his specialty. It's perfect timing. That's great, I said. When's the interview? Next week. And she hesitated. They asked me to be part of the interview panel. Is that weird? Since you guys are friends? Why would it be weird? I don't know. I just don't want you to think, I don't know. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Babe, you're helping my best friend get a job. That's amazing. I'm proud of you. She relaxed against me. Thanks, I wasn't sure how you'd feel. What I felt was satisfaction. Because this was exactly what I needed. Ethan and Sarah working together, forced into proximity, unable to act on their relationship in a professional environment. Tension building. The stress of maintaining separate personas, co-workers versus secret lovers versus friends of Andrew. Pressure. That's what I was creating. Sustained, increasing pressure on the fault lines of their situation. Ethan got the job. He started 2 weeks later, and suddenly Sarah was coming home with stories about him, about how well he was doing, about how the team loved him, about how nice it was to work with someone she already knew. I encouraged her to include him in work events, to help him integrate into the company culture, to be his advocate. You're being really cool about this, she said one night. Why wouldn't I be? I don't know. Some guys would be weird about their girlfriend working with their best friend. I trust both of you, I said. The look on her face when I said that was almost worth everything. I started tracking their movements more carefully. Not in a stalker way, just paying attention to patterns. Sarah's late nights at the office increased. Ethan's did too, which made sense since they were working together. Or together in other ways. I'd see the texts sometimes when Sarah's phone was unlocked, quick messages in Slack, supposedly about work. Conference room C in 10? Can you review this deck? Innocent on the surface, but I knew better now. I knew which nights they were actually together versus which nights Sarah was actually at work. I could tell by her energy level when she came home, by the way she showered, longer, more thorough, when she'd been with him. By small tells she didn't know she had. And I said nothing, did nothing. Just watched and documented and waited. 2 months after finding the photos, I had lunch with my brother Marcus. We hadn't been close growing up, 5-year age gap, but we'd gotten closer as adults. He was a lawyer, corporate litigation, successful and stable in ways I sometimes envied. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. That I was going through something that I needed advice about. Hypothetically, if someone discovered their partner was cheating, what were the smartest ways to protect yourself? Marcus gave me the lawyer answer. Document everything, separate finances, don't do anything stupid like property destruction or confrontation that could be recorded. "Why are you asking me this?" he said finally. "Is this about Sarah?" "Just hypothetical." "Andrew." I looked at him across the table at this generic downtown lunch spot, and I saw him see something in my face that made him sit back. "Jesus," he said, "are you serious? I don't want to talk about it." "Who?" "I really don't want to talk about it." "Is it Ethan?" The fact that he guessed immediately told me something I hadn't wanted to know. Other people had noticed things I'd been too blind to see. "Why would you say that?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "Man, I don't know, just the way they are sometimes. At family stuff, I thought I was imagining it." So it had been visible. To outside observers, their connection had been visible, and I'd missed it because I'd trusted them, because I'd believed in the fundamental goodness of the people I loved. That was my mistake, my only mistake. "I need you to not say anything," I told Marcus. "To anyone, not Mom, not Rachel, nobody." "What are you going to do?" "Handle it." "Andrew, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay, but if you need help, I'll ask." I wouldn't. This was something I needed to do alone, something that required precision and patience and a willingness to endure pain that no one else could help with. The key insight came in month 3. I was at a company happy hour, Sarah's company. She'd invited me to meet her colleagues, and I watched the way people interacted with her and Ethan, the inside jokes, the casual touches, the way they positioned themselves in conversation. They weren't as careful as they thought they were. Sarah's co-worker Jen pulled me aside at one point. "Your girlfriend and Ethan are really close, huh?" "They've known each other a while," I said. "Through me." Right. I just mean, it's nice that they get along so well. Makes the team dynamic good." But there was something in the way she said it. Something that told me other people were noticing too. Other people were talking. That's when I realized I didn't need to expose them. I just needed to let them expose themselves. The more time they spent together at work, the less careful they become, the more their relationship would leak into their professional lives. The more people would notice, and in Sarah's meticulous, reputation-focused world, that would be devastating. In Ethan's undisciplined, desperate to prove himself world, that would be career-ending. I just needed to create the right conditions for it to happen. I started making suggestions, casual ones, that Sarah should recommend Ethan for the big blockchain project her company was pitching to a major client, that he was the perfect fit for it, that it could make both their careers. Sarah was hesitant at first. "I don't want to show favoritism. People might think..." "Think what? That you're advocating for someone qualified?" "Babe, he's the best person for this. You know it. Everyone knows it." She talked herself into it. Convinced herself it was the right professional decision. Put Ethan forward for the project. He got it. A 6-month contract, high profile, directly reporting to Sarah. "Thank you," he told me one night over drinks. "Seriously, man, I know you put in a good word with Sarah. This is exactly what I needed." "You earned it," I said. We clinked glasses. He smiled at me with what seemed like genuine warmth and friendship. And I smiled back and felt absolutely nothing. The project was intense, long hours, high pressure, visibility at the executive level. Sarah and Ethan were working together constantly, sometimes until midnight, sometimes on weekends. I encouraged it, told Sarah I understood how important this was for her career, told Ethan I was proud of him for finally following through on something. What I knew, what they didn't, was that sustained, high-stress situations don't strengthen relationships. They fracture them. They reveal incompatibilities. They turn small annoyances into major conflicts. And Sarah and Ethan, for all their chemistry in bed and in secret, had never actually tried to be in a real relationship. They'd never dealt with the boring, grinding reality of working together day after day, stress piling up, pressure mounting. I could see it starting to show in small ways. Sarah would come home frustrated with Ethan's lack of detail orientation. Ethan would complain to me that Sarah was micromanaging him. They were both stressed, both exhausted, both starting to see parts of each other that the affair had let them avoid. But they couldn't break up. Because they weren't officially together, they couldn't have the fights that real couples have to release pressure. They could only smile through gritted teeth in the office and steal increasingly desperate moments alone. The pressure was building. I could feel it. See it in the tightness around Sarah's eyes, in the way Ethan's messages to me became more frequent, more needy. All I had to do was wait. 4 months in, Sarah missed her period. She told me on a Wednesday night, crying, saying she didn't understand how it could have happened because she was on birth control. I held her while she cried and did the mental math. We'd been having sex regularly. Less than before, but regularly enough that the timing could work. But so had she and Ethan. "Whatever happens," I said, "I'm here. We'll figure it out together." She looked at me with such gratitude, such relief. "You mean that?" "Of course I mean that." She made a doctor's appointment for the following week. I told her I'd take time off work to go with her. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. This is important." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already looked up paternity testing, that I knew you could do a non-invasive prenatal paternity test as early as 8 weeks, that I was already planning how to suggest it in a way that wouldn't make her suspicious. If the baby was mine, that was one scenario. If it was Ethan's, that was another scenario entirely. Either way, the truth would come out. Either way, their ability to control the narrative would disappear. But fate, it turned out, had different plans. 3 days before the appointment, Sarah woke me up at 2 in the morning, crying, bleeding, saying something was wrong. I drove her to the ER, held her hand while they did an ultrasound. Watched her face crumple when the doctor said there was no heartbeat, that these things happen, that it wasn't anyone's fault. We went home in the early morning light. She curled up in bed. I called her work and told them she wouldn't be in for a few days. Called my own work, made tea she didn't drink, sat with her while she cried. And I felt nothing, just observation, just noting that this changed the timeline, changed the plan, but didn't fundamentally alter the destination. I felt like a monster for not feeling more, for seeing her genuine pain and only calculating how it affected my strategy. But then I remembered those photos, those messages, those 9 months of lies, and I felt fine again. Sarah took a week off work. I took the week off with her, playing the supportive boyfriend. We watched TV, I made food. I let her cry when she needed to. Ethan texted me, "Heard about Sarah. I'm so sorry, man. You guys doing okay?" "We'll get through it," I wrote back. He didn't text her directly. That would have been inappropriate, given their supposed relationship was just co-workers. But I saw her checking her phone constantly, saw her face fall each time there was no message from him. She couldn't talk to him about what she was going through, couldn't lean on him, couldn't even acknowledge that he might be relevant to her grief. That isolation was doing something to her. I could see it. The way she looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. The way she held on to me at night like I was the only solid thing in her world. For a few days, I almost believed she might actually love me. Or that she had once, before everything went wrong. But then she went back to work, and within 3 days I saw a new pattern emerging in her behavior. The late nights started again. The distance returned. She'd grieved, and now she was running back to her comfort zone. Back to Ethan. Back to the affair that made her feel young and excited, and like she wasn't just someone's stable girlfriend living a predictable life. Good. I needed her to do exactly that. Needed them to re-engage, to rebuild whatever the miscarriage had disrupted, because the final phase was approaching, and I needed them both fully invested in their lie when I pulled the trigger. The project they were working on was scheduled to present to the client in 6 weeks. A big deal, millions of dollars in potential revenue, major reputational stakes for Sarah's company. Sarah was project lead, Ethan was lead consultant. If it went well, they'd both be heroes. I started asking Sarah more questions about it, showing interest in her work in ways I hadn't before. She appreciated it, opened up about the stress, the challenges, how much was riding on the presentation. "Ethan's actually been amazing," she said one night. "I know he can be flaky, but he's really stepped up." "That's great," I said. "I'm glad he's not letting you down." "Yeah, me too." I'd been patient for almost 5 months now. 5 months of pretending, of gathering evidence, of watching them build their lie higher and higher. 5 months of strategic thinking and careful planning. Now it was time to start dismantling it. Phase 1 of the end game, isolation. I started subtly poisoning Sarah's perception of her support network. Not obviously, just gentle suggestions. Her best friend Jessica was kind of judgmental lately, don't you think? Her sister was going through her own stuff, probably needs space. Her work friends were so competitive, you can't really trust them with anything personal. Not all at once, just comments here and there, over weeks wearing down her connections. With Ethan, I did the opposite. I became more present, more available. We started having lunch twice a week instead of every other week. I helped him with some of challenges on the project, became the person he relied on most. "You've been a real one lately," he told me. "Seriously, I know I've been distant, but you've been solid." The guilt in his voice was almost palpable. Almost made me feel something. Almost. Phase 2, amplification. I started making small mistakes in my relationship with Sarah. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of things that create friction, forgetting to pick something up at the store. Being on my phone more during dinner. Being less enthusiastic about her stories, not enough to cause a fight. Just enough to make her feel like maybe we were drifting, like maybe the miscarriage had damaged something between us that wasn't healing. And where did people go when their primary relationship felt shaky? To their backup, to their secret source of validation and excitement. Sarah's time with Ethan increased. I could see it in her calendar, in her texts, in the way she'd come home simultaneously energized and guilty. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. Phase 3, documentation. I hired a private investigator, not to follow them, I already knew what they were doing, but to document it in a way that would be legally and professionally credible. Time-stamped photos, verified locations, third-party testimony. The PI was a woman in her 50s named Kate, former Seattle PD, who'd seen enough of this kind of thing to not be surprised by anything. I showed her the basics of what I knew. She nodded and said she'd have a full report in 3 weeks. "Most people want this for divorce proceedings," she said. "You're not married." "I have other uses for it." She didn't ask what. Just quoted me a price and got to work. 3 weeks later, Kate handed me a file that was simultaneously everything and nothing I didn't already know. Ethan and Sarah entering hotels together on 17 separate occasions, meeting at his apartment 23 times, photos of them in his car, kissing in parking garages, a timeline that matched perfectly with the information I'd already gathered. "This is some of the clearest documentation I've seen," Kate said. "Most affairs are messier. These two have a routine. They think they're being careful. They're not." I paid her the remainder of her fee in cash and took the file home. Added it to my growing archive. The photos from Ethan's laptop. The screenshots of their messages. The PI report. 5 months of evidence, organized and indexed and ready to deploy. But not yet. Not until the absolutely perfect moment. That moment came 6 days before the big client presentation. Sarah had been stressed all week, working late every night, barely sleeping. The presentation was crucial, not just for her career, but for the company. One of their biggest potential clients, a contract that would validate everything Sarah had been working toward. She came home Thursday night at 11, exhausted, and I had dinner waiting for her, just pasta and salad, but she looked at it like I'd done something extraordinary. "You're the best," she said, kissing me quickly. We ate. She talked about the presentation, how nervous she was, how much pressure she felt. I listened and offered encouragement and suggested she take Friday off, just to rest and prepare. "I can't. Too much to do." "Then let me do something to help. What do you need?" She thought about it. "Actually, could you do me a huge favor? Could you pick up the printed presentation materials from the office tomorrow afternoon? They're supposed to be ready by 3, but I'll be in meetings all day, and Ethan's got client calls. Of course, just text me the details." She smiled at me, genuine warmth, genuine gratitude. "Thank you. Seriously, this is a huge help." After she fell asleep, I stayed up late, thinking through the final moves. Every piece was in place, every variable accounted for. Tomorrow afternoon, I'd go to Sarah's office. I'd pick up the presentation materials, and I'd have a conversation with her boss about some concerns I had about workplace conduct. Friday afternoon, I walked into Sarah's office building for the last time, said hi to the receptionist who knew me as Sarah's boyfriend, took the elevator up to the 8th floor where the marketing department lived. Sarah's boss, Richard Chen, was a serious man in his early 50s who'd built his reputation on running a tight ship. No drama, no politics, just results. Sarah respected him immensely, feared him a little too. I'd scheduled a meeting with him under the pretense of wanting to surprise Sarah with something for the presentation. A video message from her team, I'd said. Something motivational. Could I get 5 minutes of his time to coordinate? He'd agreed, curious about the boyfriend who was thoughtful enough to do something like that. We met in his office. I closed the door. "So," he said, "what did you have in mind for Sarah?" "Actually, Richard, I need to talk to you about something else, something I've been struggling with for a while now." His expression shifted, professional mask dropping into place. "Okay. I need to show you something, and I need you to understand that I'm not doing this lightly. I've spent months trying to figure out the right thing to do." I opened my laptop, pulled up a folder I'd prepared specifically for this meeting. Not all the evidence. That would have been overkill. Just enough. Photos of Sarah and Ethan entering hotels. Screenshots of work. Slack messages that were clearly flirtatious. The PI report with dates and times. Richard's face went through several expressions as he looked through it. Surprise, disappointment, anger, finally settling on cold professionalism. "How long have you known?" he asked. 5 months. "And you're telling me now because they're about to represent your company to a major client. Because Sarah's been lying to you about her relationship with Ethan. She recommended him for this job, claimed it was just because he was qualified, but they've been in a relationship for almost a year because you need to know who you're putting in front of clients." Richard sat back in his chair. Jesus, this is a mess. "I know. Why didn't you just break up with her? Why bring me into it?" "Because she's not just my girlfriend who cheated. She's your employee who's been conducting a secret relationship with a direct report, lying about it, and creating massive liability for your company. If this client finds out your team leads are sleeping together, if it comes out that she recommended him for the job because they were involved, you see the problem." He saw it. I could tell by the way his jaw tightened. "The presentation is in 6 days. I know. If I pull them off it now, you'll have to present with someone else. It'll be risky, but less risky than this blowing up during or after the pitch." Richard looked at me for a long moment. "You've been planning this?" "I've been protecting your company," I said, "and myself." It was a lie, of course. I was protecting nothing but my own need for them to face consequences. But it was a lie Richard needed to hear to justify what he was about to do. "I need to talk to HR," he said. "This stays between us until I figure out how to handle it." "Of course." I left his office, picked up Sarah's presentation materials from the front desk, and drove home. Sarah texted me an hour later. "Did you get the materials?" "Yeah, all set. They're in my car. I'll bring them to you tomorrow." "You're literally the best. Love you." "Love you too." Richard moved fast. By Monday morning, both Sarah and Ethan had been called into separate meetings with HR. I don't know exactly what was said. Sarah wouldn't talk about it when she came home that night, just went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. But I got the broad strokes from Ethan, who called me at 10 p.m., panicking. "They know," he said. "Fuck Andrew, they know about me and Sarah." I let the silence hang for a moment. Let him fill it. "Someone reported us to HR. They've got photos. They're doing an investigation. I might lose the contract. She might get fired. Jesus Christ, this is a disaster." "Wait," I said slowly. "You and Sarah? What are you talking about?" Fuck, we weren't going to tell you like this." "Tell me what, Ethan?" I heard him breathing on the other end. Heard him realize what he'd just confessed. Heard the moment where 15 years of friendship ended. "Andrew, man, I'm so sorry. It happened. We didn't mean for it to..." I hung up. He called back immediately. I declined the call. He called again. I declined again. He texted, "Please let me explain." I turned off my phone. Sarah came out of the bedroom an hour later. Her eyes were red. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. "We need to talk," she said. "Yeah," I said. "We do." She sat down on the couch. I stayed standing. I wanted the physical advantage, the height, the position of power. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "Please, just how long?" 5 months. Her face crumpled. 5 months? You knew for 5 months and didn't say anything. What would you have liked me to say? "I don't... Andrew, I'm so sorry. This isn't how I wanted..." "How you wanted what?" To break up with me? To tell me you'd been fucking my best friend in our bed? What exactly wasn't going the way you planned? She flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Sarah? Explain it to me. It just happened. I didn't plan it. We didn't plan it. 9 months ago, June, when he was staying here, when you were helping him through his breakup. That's when it started, right? How do you know all this? Does it matter how I know? The point is that it happened, and you lied. Every single day for 9 months, you looked me in the face and lied. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed. Actually laughed. You didn't want to hurt me? Is that really what you're going with? I was trying to figure out what I wanted, while using me as a safety net. While living in the apartment I pay 2/3 of the rent on. While wearing the jewelry I bought you. While making me feel crazy for noticing things were off. She was crying now, full tears. I'm so sorry. You have to believe I never meant for this to happen. I believe that, I said. I believe you're sorry. I believe you didn't plan it. I believe you're a fundamentally decent person who made terrible choices and then kept making them because it was easier than dealing with the consequences. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I want you to pack a bag and leave. Andrew? Tonight, now. I want you gone. She stared at me. This is my apartment too. No, it's not. It's my apartment that you moved into, my name on the lease, my furniture. My life that you borrowed while you figured out your shit. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, maybe Ethan's place? Oh wait, he lives in a studio, maybe a hotel, maybe your sister. I genuinely don't care, Sarah. I just want you out of my space. She stood up slowly. I need to get my things. Pack a bag now, get the rest later. I'm not doing this with you standing here. You're being cruel. I'm being practical. You want cruelty. Cruelty would have been posting those photos Ethan kept of you online. Cruelty would have been telling your entire family before you had a chance to explain. Cruelty would have been destroying you the way you destroyed me. Then why didn't you? I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it click. The realization that I hadn't just found out, that I'd known, that I'd been planning. Oh my God, she said, you reported us to Richard. I gave Richard information he needed to make informed decisions about his company. You destroyed my career. You destroyed your own career. I just made sure the consequences caught up with you. She stood there, shaking, mascara running down her face. A part of me, a small part, the part that had loved her once, wanted to comfort her. To say this was all a test and she'd passed by being honest and we could work through it. But that part was so small now, barely a whisper compared to the satisfaction I felt watching her understand what I'd done. I need to call Ethan, she said. Sure, tell him I said hi. She was gone in 30 minutes, packed a bag, called an Uber, walked out without looking back. I sat in the apartment, my apartment, and felt the silence settle around me. It was the first time in 5 months I'd been truly alone. No performance, no acting, no carefully constructed facade, just me and the wreckage I'd created. I should have felt relief, triumph, satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty, like I'd spent 5 months holding my breath, and now that I could finally exhale, I'd forgotten how. The next 2 weeks were chaos, for them, not for me. I was calm, centered, finally free. Sarah was placed on administrative leave while HR investigated. Ethan's contract was terminated immediately. Contractors didn't get the same protections as employees. The big client presentation went forward without them, led by someone else on the team. From what I heard through the grapevine, it went fine. Not spectacular, but fine. Sarah called me 17 times in those 2 weeks. I didn't answer. She texted, asking to talk, asking for her things, asking if we could work through this. I had her stuff packed and arranged for her to pick it up while I wasn't there. Ethan texted once, "I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know I never meant to hurt you. You were my brother." I didn't respond. What was there to say? That he was right? That he'd destroyed the most important friendship of his life for an affair that was already crumbling under professional scrutiny? That he'd thrown away 15 years for what? A few stolen months of excitement? He knew he'd live with it. That was punishment enough. I went to therapy. Not because I felt bad about what I'd done, I didn't, but because my brother Marcus convinced me that 5 months of sustained strategic revenge followed by systematic isolation and destruction probably indicated some things I should talk to a professional about. The therapist, Dr. Reeves, was a calm woman in her 40s who didn't seem surprised by anything I told her. "Do you feel guilty?" she asked during our third session. "No." "Do you think you should feel guilty?" "I don't know. They betrayed me," I responded proportionally. "Did you respond proportionally?" I thought about it. Maybe not proportionally, but appropriately. What would appropriate have looked like? They lied for 9 months. They made me doubt my own perceptions. They built their happiness on my ignorance. Appropriate was making sure they faced real consequences. And you feel those consequences were sufficient? Sarah lost her career trajectory. Ethan lost his contract and his reputation. They both lost me. Yeah, I think that's sufficient. Dr. Reeves made a note. What did you lose, Andrew? That stopped me. What do you mean? You spent 5 months pretending to be someone you weren't? 5 months living with constant deception? 5 months planning instead of healing? What did that cost you? I didn't have an answer for that. Still don't really. 3 months after everything exploded, I ran into Jen, Sarah's co-worker, at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. She recognized me, came over to say hi. "How are you doing?" she asked, and the sympathy in her voice was genuine. "I'm fine, really? I heard about what happened. I'm sorry. That's really awful." "Yeah." She hesitated. "Can I ask you something and you can totally tell me it's none of my business?" "Sure." "Did you know before you reported them to Richard?" I looked at her. Calculated the value of honesty versus the value of maintaining the narrative I'd constructed, decided honesty didn't matter anymore. "Yeah," I said, "I knew." "For how long?" "Long enough." She processed that. "That must have been, I can't imagine." "It was necessary." "Was it?" She said it gently, not confrontational, just curious. "I mean, you could have just left, could have just ended it with her and moved on. Why the whole thing with Richard and HR?" "Because leaving would have let them win. Would have let them stay in their bubble where they got to have their affair and their careers and no consequences. And this was better? This was fair." Jen nodded slowly. Didn't argue. But I could see she didn't agree. Could see her thinking I'd become someone darker than I needed to be. Maybe she was right. Sarah reached out one more time, 4 months after she'd moved out. An email this time, long and detailed, and probably written over multiple drafts. She told me she understood why I did what I did, that she deserved it, that she was sorry, truly sorry, and she hoped one day I could forgive her. That therapy was helping her understand how she'd betrayed not just me, but herself. That she'd ended things with Ethan. It hadn't survived the professional fallout and the reality of actually being together without the excitement of secrecy. She told me she'd gotten a new job at a smaller company, less prestigious, But maybe that was okay, that she was learning to live with the consequences of her choices, that she hoped I was healing too. And then, at the end, I know you planned it all. I know you waited and documented and strategically destroyed both of us. And the scary thing is, I get it. I understand why you did it. In your position, I might have done something similar. But Andrew, I hope you're getting help. Because the person who could do what you did, who could live with me for 5 months knowing what you knew, that's not the person I fell in love with, and I hope for your sake he's not who you've become permanently. I read it 3 times. Then I archived it, didn't respond, because she was right, and I didn't want to admit it. 6 months after the end, I went on a date. A woman named Emily I'd matched with on an app. She was a data scientist, smart and funny, pretty in an understated way. We got coffee. It went well. She asked questions about my life, and I answered them honestly, with one exception. I told her my last relationship had ended because we'd grown apart. She didn't need to know about Sarah and Ethan, didn't need to know about the 5 months of strategic revenge, didn't need to know that I'd discovered I was capable of sustained, methodical destruction of people I'd once loved. We went on a 2nd date, then a 3rd. By the 5th date, we slept together, and it was nice, comfortable and warm and uncomplicated. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was performing again, being the version of Andrew Foster that she wanted to see. The normal guy who worked in tech and liked hiking and had gone through a bad breakup but was ready to move on. I wasn't sure that guy existed anymore. 8 months later, Marcus called me. We'd been having lunch regularly, him checking on me, making sure I was okay. This time, he had news. I saw Ethan, he said, at Whole Foods, of all places. Okay. He looked rough, man, like he's aged 5 years. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you were doing fine, that you'd moved on. Good. Andrew. He wanted me to tell you something, and I wasn't sure if I should, but I think you need to hear it. What? He said he knows what he did was unforgivable. He said he's not asking for forgiveness, but he wanted you to know that losing you was the worst part of everything, worse than losing his job, worse than the relationship with Sarah falling apart, worse than anything. He said you were the best friend he ever had, and destroying that was the worst thing he's ever done. I didn't say anything. He's in therapy, Marcus continued. Really working on himself. Not that it changes anything, I just thought you should know. Why? Because maybe it helps. To know he's not just skating by without consequences, that he's actually dealing with what he did. It doesn't help. Okay, I won't bring him up again. But it did help. A little. Not in a way that made me forgive him, but in a way that made the revenge feel complete. Like I'd achieved what I set out to achieve. He was suffering. Sarah was suffering. They'd both lost things that mattered. And I'd won. Except I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd survived. There's a difference. A year after finding those photos, I quit my job. Not because anything was wrong. I was actually getting promoted, moving up, becoming the senior architect I'd always wanted to be. But because every day in that office reminded me of who I'd been when I'd worked there. The naive version of Andrew Foster, who'd believed in loyalty and trust and the fundamental goodness of people. I took a job at a startup. Different environment, different people, different challenges. Started fresh in a way I couldn't in my personal life. Emily and I were still together. She'd met my family. We'd talked about moving in together. She was everything I should want. Stable, kind, supportive, without drama or complications. But sometimes I'd catch myself watching her, looking for signs, for tells. for the moment when she'd reveal that she wasn't who she claimed to be. I knew it was unhealthy, knew it was a trauma response, knew I was projecting Sarah's betrayal onto someone who'd done nothing to deserve suspicion. But I couldn't stop, couldn't trust, couldn't let myself be vulnerable the way I'd been before. Dr. Reeves said it would take time, that healing wasn't linear, that I needed to be patient with myself. But a year in, I was starting to wonder if I'd broken something in myself that couldn't be fixed, if the revenge had cost me more than it had cost them. 18 months. After everything fell apart, I got a message on LinkedIn from Ethan. Just one line. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I'll be sorry for the rest of my life. I stared at it for an hour before I blocked him. Not because I was angry, because I didn't feel anything, and that scared me more than anger would have. 2 years later, I married Emily. It was a small wedding, just family and a few close friends. Marcus was my best man, the spot Ethan would have filled if he hadn't destroyed everything. The ceremony was beautiful. Emily was radiant. My mother cried happy tears. Everyone said what a perfect couple we were, and maybe we were. Maybe this was what healing looked like, moving forward, building something new with someone who deserved trust. But on my wedding night, alone for a moment while Emily talked to guests, I found myself thinking about that Tuesday morning 2 years earlier, about opening Ethan's laptop, about the moment everything changed. If I could go back, would I do it differently? Would I have confronted them immediately, ended it quickly, saved myself those 5 months of living a lie? Or would I do exactly what I did, patient, methodical, strategic revenge that ensured they faced real consequences? I don't know, and I think that uncertainty is what I'll carry forever. Not guilt, exactly, but the knowledge that I'm capable of something most people aren't. That when pushed far enough, I can become someone I don't fully recognize, someone who can watch the people he loves destroy themselves and feel nothing but satisfaction, someone who can engineer the complete dismantling of 2 lives and sleep peacefully at night, someone who won the war but isn't sure he survived it. 3 years after the betrayal, Emily and I had a daughter. We named her Claire. She had Emily's eyes and my grandmother's chin, and holding her in the hospital room, I felt something crack open inside me that had been frozen since that Tuesday. Love. Pure, uncomplicated, terrifying love. And with it, finally, the beginnings of regret. Not for making Sarah and Ethan face consequences, they'd earned that. But for the person I'd become in the process, for the 5 months I'd spent hardening myself into someone capable of sustained deception. For letting revenge define me more than healing. Emily noticed the change. "You've been different lately," she said one night while Claire slept between us. Good different or bad different? I don't know yet, just different. I wanted to tell her everything about Sarah and Ethan, about the photos and the planning and the systematic destruction, about how I'd spent our entire relationship built on a foundation of mistrust that she didn't deserve. But I couldn't, because telling her would mean risking what we'd built. And I wasn't that brave. So instead I said, "I'm trying to be better. For you, for Claire." "You're already good," she said. But I knew better. I knew what I was capable of. I knew the darkness I'd touched. And I knew that it was still there, dormant but not dead, waiting for the next betrayal, the next excuse to let it out. 5 years later, I saw Sarah at a conference. We were in the same industry, so it was inevitable eventually. She'd rebuilt her career, not to the heights she'd reached before, but successfully enough. She looked older, tired, but somehow more real than I remembered. We made eye contact across the conference hall. She hesitated, then walked over. "Andrew," she said. "Hi." "Sarah?" "You look good. Happy." "I am. You?" "Getting there." We stood there awkwardly, all the history between us too big to address in a convention center corridor. "I'm glad you're doing well," she said finally. "I mean that." "Thanks. You too." She started to walk away, then turned back. "Andrew, for what it's worth, I deserved what you did, all of it. And I'm sorry, not because of the consequences, but because I hurt you, because I broke something that was good. I know." "Do you? Really?" I looked at her, saw the genuine remorse, the growth, the years of therapy and self-work that had turned her into someone who could actually take accountability. "Yeah," I said, "I really do. Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought. About the rage that had driven me, about the satisfaction of watching them fall apart, about the emptiness that had followed, about Claire and Emily and the life I'd built after. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe I already have and I just don't know it yet. Maybe forgiveness is just reaching a point where it doesn't hurt anymore." "Does it hurt?" "No, not anymore." She nodded, smiled sadly. "Then maybe that's enough." That night I told Emily everything, the whole story. Sarah and Ethan and the photos and the 5 months of revenge and the person I'd become and the fear that I'd never fully escaped him. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I don't know what to say," she said finally. "I understand if this changes things." "Does it change things for you? Telling me?" "I don't know. Maybe. I think I needed you to know who you married, the whole person, not just the parts I've been showing you." She took my hand. "Andrew, we've been together for 5 years, married for 3. I've seen you with our daughter. I've watched you build a life and a career and relationships with people. I know who you are." "Do you?" "Yeah. You're someone who was hurt so badly you broke. And then you made some choices about how to put yourself back together. Maybe they weren't the right choices. Maybe you became someone you don't like. But you survived. And you learned. And you're here now, trying to be better. That's who you are. That's generous. It's true. You're not defined by the worst thing you've done, Andrew. None of us are. I'm 37 now, 6 years removed from that Tuesday morning. I have a wife I love and a daughter who's everything. I have a career that challenges me. I have friends, new friends, who don't know about any of this, who just know me as Andrew Foster, generally decent guy. I never heard from Ethan again after that LinkedIn message. I heard through the grapevine that he moved to Portland. Started over. I hope he's doing okay, not because I forgive him, but because carrying around the weight of what he did would be punishment enough without me actively wishing him suffering. Sarah sends me a LinkedIn message every year on the anniversary of when we met, just a simple, "Hope you're doing well." I don't respond, but I don't block her either. It feels like a reasonable boundary. Sometimes I think about what I learned from all of it, about betrayal and revenge and healing and what it costs to become someone you never thought you could be. I learned that revenge feels good in the moment, but hollow in the aftermath. That strategic destruction of people you once loved leaves scars on your own soul. That the capacity for darkness exists in everyone, and it's easier to access than you think. But I also learned that people can change. That healing is possible even when you think you've broken something permanently. That love, real love, the kind that sees all your flaws and chooses you anyway, is worth the risk of vulnerability. I learned that forgiveness isn't something you decide to do. It's something that happens gradually when you're not looking, when you've finally created enough distance from the pain that it stops defining you. And I learned that the person you become in your worst moments isn't necessarily your permanent self. That you can touch darkness and come back. That redemption isn't about erasing what you've done, but about choosing differently going forward. Last month, Claire asked me about friendship. She's 3.5 now, starting to understand relationships beyond mommy and daddy. What makes someone a best friend? She asked. I thought about Ethan. About 15 years of believing we were brothers. About how thoroughly that belief had been demolished. A best friend is someone who tells you the truth even when it's hard, I told her. Someone who keeps their promises, someone you can trust. How do you know if you can trust someone? You don't, not for sure. You just have to decide if the risk is worth it. Emily caught my eye across the room, smiled softly, understanding what I was really saying. That sounds scary, Claire said. It is, but it's also how you find the people who matter. I still have all the evidence. The photos, the messages, the PI report. It's backed up in 3 different places, encrypted safe. I tell myself I keep it for practical reasons in case there's ever some legal issue, some reason I need proof of what happened. But the truth is simpler. I keep it because it's proof I survived, that I faced the worst betrayal of my life and made it through, not unscathed. I'll never be unscathed, but intact. Some nights, usually when I can't sleep, I think about opening those files. Looking at the evidence again, remembering the clarity of purpose I felt during those 5 months of planning. But I don't. Because that version of Andrew Foster, the one who could plot systematic revenge with perfect patience, isn't someone I want to be anymore. Even if part of me suspects he's still in here, waiting. Emily asked me once what I would tell my younger self. The Andrew Foster from before the betrayal. What warning I'd give. I'd tell him that when you find something broken, you have 2 choices. You can destroy it completely, or you can try to build something new with the pieces, and one of those choices lets you sleep at night. Which one did you choose? She asked. Eventually, the second one. But it took me a while to get there. The truth is, I don't have a clean ending for this story. No perfect moment of closure or realization. No Hollywood epiphany where everything suddenly made sense. I'm just a guy who got betrayed by the 2 people he trusted most, who responded in a way that was strategic and effective and probably morally questionable, who destroyed 2 lives in pursuit of justice or revenge or whatever you want to call it, and who's been trying to figure out ever since whether that made me strong or broken, whether I should be proud or ashamed, whether I won or lost. Most days I think I did what anyone would do in my position. Most days I think I was right to make them face consequences. But some days, usually when I'm watching Claire sleep, or when Emily looks at me with total trust, or when I see old couples holding hands in grocery stores, I wonder if I could have been bigger than my rage, if I could have walked away without the systematic destruction, if I could have healed without first burning everything down. I'll never know, because you only get one chance at these moments, one choice about who you'll become when everything falls apart. I chose revenge, patient, methodical, complete revenge. And I'm still living with what that choice made me. Sometimes people ask me if I believe in forgiveness, real forgiveness, the kind that lets go of everything and moves forward clean. I tell them I believe in moving forward, in building new things with new people, in learning from pain instead of living in it. But real forgiveness? The kind where you genuinely wish well for the people who destroyed you? I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be. And maybe that's okay. Maybe surviving is enough. Maybe you don't have to forgive everything to have a good life. Maybe you can carry some darkness with you and still be happy. At least that's what I tell myself on the good days. On the bad days, I wonder if I'm still that guy sitting in a parking garage, staring at photos that shattered his world, making decisions about who he was going to become. On those days, I hold my daughter closer, kiss my wife longer, try to be the person they think I am instead of the person I know I became. And I hope that eventually the person I'm trying to be will become more real than the person I was. But I'll tell you this, if someone ever betrays Emily the way Sarah betrayed me, if someone ever breaks my daughter's heart the way Ethan broke mine, I know exactly what I'm capable of. And that knowledge doesn't scare me as much as it probably should. Maybe that means I haven't healed completely, maybe that means I never will, or maybe it just means I learned something about myself that Tuesday morning 6 years ago, something fundamental and permanent, that I'm capable of patience, of strategy, of looking at someone I love and feeling nothing but cold calculation about how to dismantle their life piece by piece. That capacity doesn't go away just because you're happy now. It doesn't disappear just because you built something new. It just waits, dormant, ready, and somehow I've learned to live with that. The screenshot was just the beginning. What came after, the 5 months of planning, the systematic destruction, the person I became, that's what I'll carry forever. Not with pride, not with shame. Just with the quiet certainty that if I had to do it again, I probably would. And that's the real ending to this story. Not that I got revenge, not that I survived, not that I'm happy now, but that I learned who I am when everything breaks, and I'm still not sure if I like him.